Hello, it's Alexia here. Now, I've got a fantastic interview to share with you today. Today, I'm going to be sharing an interview with Celeste. Now, Celeste is going to be spilling the beans on her head trash clearance journey and what exactly that looked like for her to go from experiencing tokophobia to experiencing inner peace. Now, this is going to be for you if you're interested in understanding a little bit more about what it looks like to clear head trash using head trash clearance. If you have tokophobia and you're wondering what that journey looks like in terms of untangling it and working through it, if you are somebody that's maybe interested in training in head trash clearance, you want to kind of see behind the scenes of how this method works its way through things like phobia and anxiety. So this is who this conversation is for. Anybody that wants to embark on a healing journey and wants to see behind the scenes, wants to maybe have a peek under the bonnet, if you like, because this conversation is very open, honest, and vulnerable. Celeste is fantastic, and she came to me for help with her tokophobia. And first of all, she bought my book and was trying to do it on her own. And then we started working together. And she has made incredible progress in a very, very short amount of time. And so I invited her to join me for a conversation so that we could talk about that journey and lift the lid on exactly what she cleared, what she did, what that journey was like, how it felt, what were some key milestones for her, what were some key moments on that journey for her. And this is really, if you're interested in any aspect of clearing your head trash, this is a really great conversation to give you more insight into what a powerfully transformative healing journey can look like. So that's all I want to say about this. So yeah, this is Celeste, and she is fabulous. And I hope that you enjoy this conversation and get as much out of it as I'd like you to. Hello, Celeste. Welcome to this little conversation we're going to have all about your healing journey. I can't wait. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Alexia, and yourself?
Oh, I'm always excited to chat to you, always excited to chat to you. Now, we're going to talk a bit about what your healing, your clearance journey has been like, because it has been quite formidable from where I'm standing. And I can't wait to hear more about it and enable anybody else to hear what it looks like to clear your head trash in a very enthusiastic and committed manner, which is what I've witnessed you do over the last few months of this year. So before we dive into that, would you mind just maybe tell us a little bit about you, so we can get a sense of Celeste? And you are a doggy lady, aren't you? So maybe worth mentioning the doggy too, because very important person in your life.
I'm glad you said that she's a person, because I mean, my
She kind
mom,
of is, yeah.
my mom does not agree. But anyways, my name is Celeste, and I am from Tennessee in the USA. So I guess I should say, hey y'all. Howdy is for the Texans. But name is Celeste, and as Alexia said, I am definitely a dog mom here. So it's just I'm an Australian Shepherd enthusiast, and so have a little fur baby named Gemini. She's my heart. But as for my head trash journey, it really all started when a few months, well, gosh, how long was it? 7, 8 months? I don't know. It's been a hot minute. But
I think it
a
was
few
about
months
March
ago,
where you said you
was it
started.
March?
Was it
It was a,
March?
it was a little March was when I got in contact with you. So I guess it should have been maybe February. February is when I really just started undertaking everything. But I was in a relationship with this really great guy, and he wanted kids, and I I've always said that I was happy fostering kids or adopting kids, but you can ask anyone in my life who knows me, and they will all say, no, Celeste has never wanted kids. She's never wanted biological children ever, not a day in her life. And but I don't know, like this relationship really, really caused me to actually stop and ask myself, okay, why do I not want kids? Why am I okay with the idea of fostering kids or adopting kids that are not biologically my own? Like what is going on in my head there? And side note, I remember being in college, and you know those fancy, they're not memes on the internet, but like they're like the hipster pictures with fancy words and definitions, and they're meant to look all cool, and they're fancy words with fancy definitions. I remember coming across one of those back in college, and it said something phobia, fear of childbirth and pregnancy. And I remember looking at that and being like, I probably have that. But I was so triggered by it that I didn't even want to investigate it.
So you can't remember the name of it.
I couldn't even remember the name.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking, oh wow, I probably have that. But like I said, so triggered that I really didn't delve into that at all. But when I realized that faint echo of a memory, I was like, I think this is a thing. Hold on just a minute. And sure enough, the fear of childbirth and pregnancy, tokophobia. And the more I read about it, the more I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, I have this. Yeah, this is my, I don't want to say my life in a nutshell, because I'm far more of a person than just, I'm not limited to my tokophobia, but so many things in my life just made sense. And for the first time, I had to ask myself, all right, do I truly not want kids? Or is it my fear of pregnancy and childbirth limiting and coloring that answer? And I didn't have an answer. And I truly did not have an answer. So I started really looking for resources for tokophobia. And there's not much out there, Alexia. There's just not much out there.
No, shocking, isn't it?
Shocking. But because there wasn't much out there, your name came up all over the place.
Yeah. Damn.
Congratulations for starting and dominating the conversation around tokophobia, because it needs to be talked about.
Right.
But I found your Fearless Birthing podcast and your Fearless Birthing book, started really like reading that, listening to all the episodes. And you kept mentioning your head trash clearance method. So I didn't know that you were actually going to go into that in the Fearless Birthing book. So I just ordered the head trash clearance book. And I used to read ahead in books. If I was just that monster who always, looked at the ending of the book.
Yeah.
But I didn't this time. So yeah, I ordered a whole new book. So I paused the Fearless Birthing book to really dig into head trash clearance. And the more I read, like y'all, the copy of my book, I have so many notes and annotations in all the corners of the pages. And I answered all of the questions that, were posed at the end of the chapter or through the chapters. And the more I connected where my head trash came from, the more things that I just pulled out of my head, and like things that were long forgotten or that I thought healed, because, time is the healer of all, just the more I connected all the dots of my head trash, the darker things became, because like I wasn't just dealing with the pressure of tokophobia anymore. I realized it was so much bigger than that. And tokophobia isn't just the isolated fear of pregnancy and childbirth, but that unpacks into so many other things. And all of those singular things are actually non-birth related most of the time, that connect and feed back into the rest of your life. And so my head trash clearance to-do list became bigger and bigger and bigger and longer, just the more dots I connected. And it's just been a whole journey. But
Mm.
to answer your question, just initially, tokophobia made me like just plunge into the rabbit hole.
Yeah. And so some of those things earlier, can you remember some of those strands or those themes that you identified early on as you were going through the head trash book? What was some of that? Can you remember some of those things that were you spotted early on?
The initial list, no, because I kept having to like redo it and redo
Rehash
it.
it.
Yeah, rehash it. But you actually, the head trash clearance list that you have, that you made for me in the Tokophobia course, let's see, the initial feeling, I mean, the initial things that were on my original list, injustice, having no choice, being stuck, unpredictability, things going wrong, trust issues, lots of childhood wounds, feeling alone, not feeling supported, mistreated, being an outcast,
So yeah, I mean, just listening to those alone, just to anybody
like
listening.
coping and not coping, discomfort, pain. I mean, none of these are like actual birth related.
Yeah, well, maybe the pain one at
Maybe
a
the
push.
pain, but
Yeah, yeah,
you have pain in all of your other areas of life.
yeah,
So, I mean, once again, it's not an isolated birth fear. Now, I did make an isolated list for birth and pregnancy stuff, and that's quite a list. But
yeah.
most of the individual strands, it just control was a big one. Like
So
it
it's no
wasn't
need to
on
laugh.
it wasn't on my original list, but when you put it on my head trash clearance to-do list for the program, oh my goodness, that rabbit hole broke down into so many other strands. How long did that take me to get through?
I don't know. I think that was about a week or two.
I want to say it was 2.
So let me
It just
just pause
hours.
and maybe explain to people who are watching. When you decide to clear your head trash, the step one on the head trash clearance method is identify your head trash. So pain or fear of losing control. And so what the best thing you need to do, or when you get in touch with me, if I write out your list, is you fill out a lovely little document where I get all nosy and ask you questions. And then from that, I identify your own personal head trash clearance list. So you would have started reading the book and trying to identify your own list and work that out for yourself based on some of the questions that I would have asked in the book. But then when you join my program, you pick the option where you said, hey, Lex, you write me my list. So I know exactly what I need to focus on. And I think that's the difference is when you're trying to figure it out yourself, you don't always know if you're working on the right thing, if that really is the thing to clear. Whereas
Right.
you got me to write your list. You're like, okay, I know this is my list. I'm going to go get her to write it. So this list, can you remember how many items are on your own personal list, approximately?
Now I have big handwriting, so I will preface that. But I remember it being, I know, like a notebook page front and back
Okay.
list.
And that's quite typical, actually. When I'm writing out my clients' list at mine before I share them with it, on an A4 notepad, I'm filling a page with 2 columns. So so which is about 30, 50 items, depending on where
Now
you're at.
I will say that a big game changer from when I was trying to sort all of this out by myself and then before you got involved was I would start with the head trash clearance method, and the things that would come up during a clearance, I would just add to my to-do list. Which actually just stressed me out more because the list, my already freakishly long list, just kept growing and growing and growing and growing. And when I started the program with you, you suggested to stop, pause the current clearance that I was doing, and then address whatever came up.
Yeah.
And when I started doing that, that was just a game changer. And yes, it was still an uphill battle, but the steps that I was taking were a lot bigger because I guess I work in metaphors. So before it was like trying to climb uphill with a bunch of thistles and branches and thorns and in my path, that's already complicating a really steep uphill journey.
Yeah.
But when you gave me that suggestion of stopping and addressing whatever came up first, and then circling back to what I was originally working on, that's why Alexia and I were laughing, because when I when I kept doing control, more things just popped up and more
Yeah.
things pop. I mean, the notes that I have on control in my little head trash clearance notebook went on for pages with new realizations, new thoughts, it just kept unraveling. And it took me a good 2-ish weeks to finally circle back to control. But once I started stopping and addressing, it was like getting rid of all of those branches and those thistles and those thorns, and finally just having a clear path to keep trotting uphill.
I guess using your metaphor, like you were basically trying to go directly up the hill, whereas actually you had to stop and just walk around the hill and then around, and maybe take the hill just slightly on
dig under the hill.
A bit more of a gentle slope, which meant you could actually make it up the hill without this kind of vertical steep.
And maybe like traverse the hill in a zigzag manner, and then parachute out of the sky on top of Bill. Y'all,
then slide down the hill on a muddy slip.
That's what it was like.
Yeah. The thing is, then that's such a great metaphor, actually, even though we're giggling our bits off. It is such a great metaphor, because that can be how clearing your head trash feels, especially. And also, I just want to kind of check in here that while you were doing all this, according to my head trash ladder of healing, you were a washing ball on my. So if people watching don't know what my head trash ladder of healing is, you can go to the quiz on the head trash website, clearheadtrash.com/quiz. And you can identify whether you're a conker, a washing ball, a bouncy ball, a snooker ball, or a glitter ball. And so when you're a washing ball or a conker, it's really hard going. And any effort you make is just feeling like you're going through mud, or going up a really steep slope full of like thistles and ditches and mud and everything like that. It can feel like a lot of hard work and not making a lot of progress. But you were wrestling with some really big themes that affect everybody. You know, the theme of control, then losing control or not being in control. I mean, that's massive for most people, right? But it's especially massive for those on the tokophobia journey. So right. Yeah, you were kind of circling back. So what kind of things were coming up when you were wrestling that control piece? Can you remember any of them? Let me just check my notes.
Yeah, let me check my notes. Let's see. I think this is the same notebook that I was using at the beginning of the program.
6 pages later.
On you. Okay, yeah. So, and this is going to sound like nonsense because, well, no one's in my head, but some things that connected to me was control versus no control. You need to work on the opposite for whatever you clear. But for me, no control was not the opposite of control. The opposite for control for me was surrendering. So knowing that, I wanted to, before I went down anything else, I wanted to address no control. Then that led to having control over my own body and the opposite of that, no control over my own body. That led to a lot of fear. So I had to clear fear, and then bravery. Fear trailed down to helplessness. So I had to clear helplessness, which the opposite of that was capability. So going back to helpless, that fed into the fear of capability. So, okay, fine, I'm capable, but I'm terrified of being capable. Like, yeah, my body's capable of pregnancy and childbirth, but I was terrified of my body's own capabilities. So that fed into power and versus powerlessness.
Yeah.
Which that fell into leading versus following. That led into empowered versus disempowerment.
Yeah.
That led into judgment versus acceptance. That led to comparison versus sameness. That led to not being enough versus not being enough, or being enough versus not being enough. And then trapped came up, but then I'm like, no, that's a whole theme in itself. So I put that on hold, continue
Very
wrestling
wise.
with control. So I did surrendering, letting go. That once again circled back to trap, but I'm like, nope, I'm not going to touch that yet because I need to work on control. And I mean, it just kept going and going and going.
It's the I think the metaphor I like describing with this, it's like the magician's hat when he pulls out like the red neckerchief and then it's connected to the blue one, and then you're like, oh look, it just keeps going. You're like, am I ever going to get to the end of this one?
Honestly, I was so mentally, I felt like, I remember, I can't remember the exact episode of one of your podcasts, but you compared it to renovating a kitchen. And like, yes, you're emptying and sorting out your head trash is going to create one really, really, really messy kitchen.
Yeah.
But if you stop midway through it, you're just going to have a kitchen that's not functioning, or you're just going to be forever trapped in this crappy kitchen.
In the rubble. Yeah.
In the rubble. Yes, you can backtrack and put everything back, but if you came that far, why not just finish the thing?
Yeah.
And so that's what it felt like. But we compare it to spaghetti or a bag of marble. It's not a bag of marbles where you can pick out just individual little marble. Everything is connected. And but it felt like, and this might be an analogy that just grosses people out. Have you ever emptied a shower drain with
oh my god, I did this yesterday.
That's what it felt like. That's what it like.
When you have long hair.
Everything is not even just connected. Like, yeah, spaghetti noodles are connected, but they easily come apart. No, my head trash was congealed into this yucky, slimy, nasty mess that just kept coming out of that drain.
That is gross. Stop.
I'm getting you back for the emetophobia.
So let's talk a little bit about your experience. Like, this is you sort of navigating and picking through your head trash. But what about what was clearing head trash like for you? Like, what was that like, the act of doing so, but also what were you noticing in terms of any shifts in terms of how you were feeling? So first of all, let's talk about your experience of actually clearing stuff. Like, what was, because some people respond in different ways when they're clearing stuff. I know I do lots of yawning. I've got some clients that do loads of burping. I've got some people that get really tingly. And it's like a certain thing happens to you where you know you're clearing, so like something's shifting and you're like, oh, that was a big one, because you're getting some kind of sign. So what was your experience like?
I am a consistent yawner.
Okay.
But I have experienced all of those symptoms. Okay. I've experienced the tingling down my arms and my legs. I've experienced, the burping. And I've experienced, and you've mentioned it here and there on your podcast, but like just spontaneously breaking down in tears. Like the first time that happened, I'm not a crier. So just spontaneously crying was very new to me. I was like, okay, I'll just follow this and see where this goes.
And it's without thought, isn't it? It's like crying, but without knowing why you're crying, which is weird.
It was the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
I felt like Amy Pond from Doctor Who at her wedding. Like, why am I crying? Like, this is a tear. Why am I crying? Except they were ugly. It was ugly sobbing. But most of the time it was just a lot of yawning. And then there were some, it really depends on the clearance in terms of thoughts. There are some clearances that I just did that just was just consistent, like physical symptoms, the yawning, the burping, the tingles. And then just nothing new in terms of shifting shifting thoughts in the moment, but I saw it later in my life. Like, oh, yeah, this is happening, but I'm not as triggered.
Mm.
And then there were other clearances where I had these big grand realizations, and those realizations really like shifted and scattered my thoughts around in a good way.
So can you remember any of those?
I remember, so loss of control over my body. That was a good one. And because you can't choose whether or not you get pregnant. It like you can't control what happens. You can't control your body's response. And so that freaked me out, which once again led to the fear of my body's capabilities. And yeah, you can take all the proactive measures, but at the end of the day, you cannot control how your body's eggs reacts to the sperm. Like you don't have any control down there. You just it's going to do its business. But and that terrified me. But a big grand realization that I had in that clearance was, well, there are so many things that we often say we can't control anything outside of us. The only thing we can control is ourselves. And that's a big common saying that a lot of people, really hold on to. I had the scary realization that we can't control 99% of what goes on in our bodies. We we can't. A lot of things are just autopilot in terms of how our bodies operate. We breathe without thinking about it. We blink without thinking about it. You can't control whether or not you get a headache, or whether you come down with the stomach flu, or whether you get the actual flu or COVID, or you can't control if you get a sore throat. You can't control your reaction to pollen. You can't, all of these things that can go on in your body, you don't have control over. And then especially like being a woman, I can't control when I get my period. I can't control PMS symptoms. I can't control any of that. My body is going to do its thing, and I have no control over the internal workings of my body. I can take ibuprofen. I can take vitamin C for that stomach bug going around. But at the end of the day, I can really only control my thoughts, and that is about it. But the way my body reacts, I don't have any.
Did that leave you feeling? Did that kind of leave you feeling worse off? I mean, is that a positive realization for you?
Until I did the opposite. Yes, until I did the opposite, and it really, I remember realizing, as terrifying as pregnancy was for me, it was really, really refreshing to finally just realize, you know what? If I do get pregnant, which that still terrifies me. Like I'm still working through my tokophobia, but like this was at the beginning of the program. That thought terrified me. But I was like, if that happens, my body knows how to grow baby. The symptoms are going to be really unpleasant. But at the end of the day, my body will know what to do.
Yeah.
And during labor, my body will know what to do. I can't control any of that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, as I finished working through the whole theme of control, like I've noticed a huge shift in my thinking of, yeah, I can't control that. Can't control that. And it doesn't lead to a level of helplessness. I just have peace in the fact that I can really only control my thoughts, and I can take deep breaths. But there's very little I can control, and that is okay.
Well, that's quite a
it is.
shift, isn't it? That's quite a shift, though, to be able to be someone that can be.
And if you asked I was a huge control freak.
Yeah. Would you say that you are now then? Would you say you're not?
Nope. I mean, can I take charge? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I sit back? Absolutely.
So you're mindful with your control now. You like, oh, I'll control that, but not that. That's worth me getting involved with, but no, I'm going to leave that. So now you pick and choose.
Yeah. Now I pick and choose, and it's not a trigger. It's not a, oh, I need to control this. I need to have my way. I need to, it's, oh, okay. It is what it is.
Yeah.
It'll happen.
That's pretty. I mean that 6 times around the mountain was worth it by the
So,
sound of it.
right. So, I mean, in the midst of clearing all of that out, it did get very discouraging at times. Like, is
Yeah.
this ever going to end? Is this ever going to end? And I'm a gritty person. I stick with it. I mean, I like to see things through. But mentally, it was just so much that if I didn't have the program to keep me accountable, I don't know. This isn't a sponsorship, but like
Yeah.
if I didn't have the program to keep me accountable, if I knew you were not going to be on my tail,
Yeah.
then I don't know how much I would have gotten done.
Yeah.
I think I would have eventually sorted through it because, well, going back to that kitchen analogy, the kitchen needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah.
But I think that theme of control would have taken months to work out instead of weeks.
Yeah. So you were in a group program where we had a weekly call for about 5 weeks. And every week we were getting together, right? What did you clear? What did you clear? Okay, you're gonna clear this for next week. You're gonna come back and keep us posted. And it was go, go, go. And some were doing more than others. And I think you were at the top end of the performance scale and getting a lot done. But yeah, you were very committed to what you were doing and persistent. And what's great about that is it sounded like it was a lot of effort and a lot of hard work. And it is, because I've been there, I know exactly what you've been through in that sense. But my goodness, it looks like it's paid off in bucket loads. What would you say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I am just so much so much happier and calmer and just yes, I still have a huge bucket load of things to work through on my head trash clearance to-do list, but just in the few months that I've been on this whole clearance journey, I just feel less triggered, less anxious, more happy, just being able to just pick and choose how I react to situations instead of instead of reacting in a trigger.
Yeah.
But yeah, I looked around at all the gunk that I had, and I was like, it stopped being about tokophobia long ago. Because it just connected to so many other things in my life that and I think it was because of that, because it wasn't just tokophobia. Sorry, because I knew it connected to so many other non-birth related aspects of my life. I was like, I need to sort through this. Hurting people hurt people, and I didn't realize I had this much hurt, this many unhealed wounds, this gunk in my head. I want to have healthier relationships. And friendships, and I want to just be in a better headspace, and I want to see myself on the other end of this. And so because the tokophobia stopped being about tokophobia long ago.
Yeah.
And I just tugged up my sleeves and I just waded through the mud, and I was like, all right, let's do this.
And you hit a point where I remember on one of the group calls, one of the things we do is just go around and go, okay, how's your week been? And I remember the week where you flipped over into snooker ball level. So you had started in washing ball and you'd like been chugging your way through bouncy ball stage. And then there was the call, it's like, oh, she's just said something. I think she's now at snooker ball. Oh my God. So the snooker ball on the head trash model is really this level where you start really feeling very neutral about a lot of things, which means you're much calmer. And so tell us about the experience you had when you went to church one week. And when you started telling us this, I was like, oh my God, I think she's a snooker ball.
Yeah. Yeah, so there was this young couple in my Sunday school class, and they had just had a baby. And I was at this extra event one night, and they brought their baby along, back row. And the baby started crying. Now, when I looked my tokophobia in the eye at the beginning of this whole journey, like it used to be that I could look at babies and pregnant women and not be triggered because I was always like, that's them. That's not my situation. That's totally them. That's good for them. They look quite happy, whatever. But when I realized my tokophobia was a thing and I started looking at pregnancy and childbirth as a possibility on my own future, there were months in this whole thing where the thought of looking, I mean, I even saw her like at church. And one time I remember sitting a few seats away from her and I had a panic attack because I couldn't, the thought of just I don't know, like looking at a pregnant belly just sent me into a full-fledged panic attack. And I couldn't look at babies, couldn't look at other pregnant women in my day-to-day
Mm,
life, which that's hard to do because they're everywhere, right?
yeah, seriously hard.
Life, my friends were getting pregnant. And so like that was hard. And so there were weeks where I really and truly could not look at a pregnant woman or a baby without literally I couldn't breathe because of
Mm,
anxiety. And I remember being at this extra event one night and the baby started crying. And I just remember sitting there and just neutrally thinking, I am so glad I don't have a baby. And it didn't come from a place of anxiety or fear or it wasn't a reaction to being triggered. It was just a thought that came out of nowhere, clear as day, as neutral as plain white socks or the air before us. And I remember as soon as I thought that, I was like, oh, wait a sec. Is that my answer? Like, because I started this whole entire thing with, remember, my original question was, all right, do I truly not want kids? Or is my tokophobia and the fear of it controlling my answer?
mm,
And so I was like, wow, I think I have my answer. And a few weeks later after the fact, I was telling my some friends and in different instances and my aunt who, you know, they all looked at me and they're like, Celeste, and especially my aunt's like, I've known you your whole life. You've never been maternal. You've never like I could have told you that. And or my friends like, we've known you for years and years and years. Like you've never wanted to be a mom. You've never wanted kids. You've never like what are you talking about? Why did you even have to go through all of this? And I'm like, well, I'm glad you know that. But but at the end of the day, I'm really glad that I did go through that. Go through the whole journey and I'm still on it. I still have so much stuff
mm,
on my list. But once again, I realized just how many dots connected to unbirth related aspects of my life.
mm.
And I am so glad that that initial question um shoved me down that rabbit hole
Yeah,
because I'm so much better for it. But it took hours upon hours upon hours. It's like going to the gym. Like, yeah, it's going to be hard at first. You're
yeah.
not going to want to do it. But the more you do it, the more you show up for yourself and the more you're like, all right, the more you just say, all right, this is what needs to be done. I'm doing this for me, the easier it becomes.
Yeah. And you've made this transformation, which is a remarkable transformation, in what, about 6 months? Is it about 6 months, isn't it? 6 or 7 months.
About
Yeah.
7.
And so, yeah, you've gone from, and for those that just want to see what that looks like, if you go to my Conquer the Glitter Ball, to do the quiz, she's gone from a washing ball to a snooker ball, which is jumping up 2 levels on that ladder, it's pretty epic. A lot of people don't make that kind of leap in a lifetime, and you've done it in 6 months. So, this is remarkable feat, really. And yes, it's hard work, but it's now you're at some place where you're calm, you're not getting triggered. Anxiety, do you have anxiety? Would you say you have anxiety?
It's funny you ask that. No, I did not have diagnosed anxiety before I realized I had tokophobia. Like, all of my friends do. So they've always described their panic attacks. And I remember, like, in the months where I was really sorting through all of this out, where pregnant women and babies were sending me into these full-fledged fits, I was like, this is what they're talking about. Bless them. This is horrible.
So you definitely thought you had anxiety, and now you don't. No.
Yeah. Nope. Not something
No.
I can really.
Amazing. So when you think, and I think I asked you this before we started recording, but when you look back at who you were before, which was maybe just 6 months ago, can you relate to her now? Can you remember what that was like?
Yes and no. Have you ever sat in a really, really hot bath before, and like you get up, you get out of the water, and you feel the echoes of the heat of the really hot water you were in? That's what it feels like. Like, you're out of the water. You're safe. That the heat's not going to bother you. You're not going to sweat anymore, but you still feel the prickles of the heat. So that's how I would describe it as that. Like,
yeah.
Do I connect to her? Faintly. Only because I've always just been very in tune with myself. I'm always self-reflecting. I'm very introspective. And so I maybe a part of my subconscious is holding on to her just as a measuring rod to see how far I've come.
Yeah.
But as for having those own reactions to things and the thoughts she had, no.
Yeah. And are you noticing any differences elsewhere in your life? I mean, this has been very focused on your tokophobia, and you've talked that some things you've been working on really have nothing to do with birth. But I'm just wondering if you noticed any changes elsewhere outside of maybe the context of thinking about a family or babies or that kind of thing.
The biggest thing, and I was just reflecting on this today. Ask anyone who knows me. I'm terrified of germs. Like, what's the word? Hypochondriac.
Yeah.
I verge on that. Just because I have my own history of health issues, but a side effect of those long ago health issues was a weakened immune system. And so I catch everything. And it stinks being sick. It just stinks. And so I've always been terrified of germs and getting sick. And for the most part, I've just, when I realized that I have no control over how my body reacts to things, I can control my thoughts, but going back to the whole, like, my body's capabilities and whatnot, I'm not terrified of getting sick nearly as much. Like, I have educator friends who are like they work with kindergartners, and they're always sick.
Yeah.
And it used to be that I would like triple my vitamin C intake, and I would like do everything in my power, which is still good things to do, but it would be out of fear of getting sick. And now, I'm just like, if I get sick, I get sick. With the exception of throwing up. I don't do vomit. I have 100%, still working through that. I need to go back and do that clearance.
Yeah.
I am sure that emetophobia connects to so many other things.
Yeah.
I'm positive. I don't know what they are, but so with the exception of the notion of vomit, I'm okay with getting sick.
So it sounds like quite a transformation, really. And if you know, oh, go on.
Also, you've mentioned on your previous podcast how like carrying all of this, or previous episodes of your podcast, carrying all of this around, it makes you exhausted.
Mm,
And you need more sleep. Which means or you need more sleep, you need more caffeine, you need more padding and support to even do the bare minimum and cope because you're carrying around all of this gunk in your head.
mm,
And that takes up a lot of energy and a lot of headspace. And I've noticed that just be it's like carrying around a whole backpack of bricks. And the more I empty those bricks out, the easier I'm sleeping.
ah,
I used to have to get I used to have to have a second cup of coffee during the day, or I wouldn't cope. And
brilliant.
now it's just my morning caffeine, like my morning cup of coffee. It's enough to get me through the day, with the exception of today, because I made the poor decision to stay up until midnight finishing a really good show. But that was my choice. But it's literally due to a lack of sleep that just is justifying this cup of coffee. But
Mm.
in the months and the years before, it was a huge vicious cycle of just, and it was all because I'm carrying all of this stuff.
So do you need less sleep, do you think? Are you sleeping less?
Sleeping less, taking less sleep aid medication, because
Okay.
I have insomnia. And so because all I ruminate on all of this.
Yeah.
So I can't turn my brain off when I go to sleep. So yeah, I'm taking my sleep aid less, or like a lower dosage, and my brain is able to finally just turn off and just
Mm.
rest, so I can go to sleep, and my sleep is more restful. And I just feel so much better.
Amazing. So less sleep, better quality of sleep, less insomnia kicking in, and then less coffee. Wow,
Happier.
that's a side effect. That's a freebie on the side.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, Celeste, thank you so much for sharing your journey, being really honest about that. Is there anything for those people contemplating clearing their head trash and embarking on such a journey like you've been doing? Any words of warning, any wisdom or anything? I know you kind of laid it on, like been very honest about what it's like. We've not kind of made it sound sexy and in fun, although it can be fun, to be fair. I try and make the group calls light-hearted and the experience fun. So I think having head trash isn't fun, but it doesn't mean the clearing of it has to be deeply unpleasant. And yes, some of it is a bit tearful and a bit, snotty and all the rest of it. But I don't know, like anything else you want to share to anybody who's contemplating thinking about it or looking to
Stick
sort the head
with
out?
it. Stick with it. Just, it gets easier the more you untangle and the more you
Yeah.
get out of the nasty drain.
Yeah.
But no, I would just say show up for yourself, stick with it. Keep a journal. I cannot
Yes.
keep a journal, write down, have a separate place for your actual head trash clearance list, but also for each clearance, keep a journal. And the way I jot down my notes is I just write down the clearance, do a little arrow down, make space for any realizations, any notes, and then whatever the next thing that pops up, I write that next thing down. I mean,
Mm.
yeah, and then leave space for, the opposite and any annotations. And then sure enough, when another thing pops up, I just draw another arrow and I just keep going. And that leads me to my second suggestion. Don't just add stuff to the list, because that list
Mm.
is just going to keep growing.
Mm.
Address it on the dot. If something is
Mm.
connected to your original clearance, stop with the original clearance and address whatever popped up, because
Mm.
it's connected, and you can't sort
Mm.
out the original thing because that connected thing, it needs to be sorted out.
Mm.
So and sure enough, there's going to be another thing that connects to the connected thing. Write that down.
Mm. Mm.
And it's it feels very stop, go, but that was a game changer for me. So show up, keep a journal, and address the connected stuff before you move on.
And what kind of chunks of time were you putting in? Like, how long was a typical clearance chunk for you?
Oh, I've heard you say that you know the more you do it, you can get your clearances done in like 15 to 20, 30 minutes.
Exactly.
I haven't gotten to that point yet.
Okay.
I've sat doing clearances before for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Is
that a total clearance? Is that including all the rabbit holes, or is that
all the rabbit holes?
Yeah. Okay. So you're kind of
not a total clearance theme. Like I said, control took weeks.
Yeah.
But no, it's not uncommon for a clearance for me to look like an hour to 2 hours.
Yeah. To be fair, I think I probably do that because the stuff comes up and you want to address it there and then. So to be able to sit and just do, one thing and its opposite in one sitting is
my social calendar had to be put on hold for a good bit. Because this had to take priority. Because I knew that it wasn't going to get done if it didn't hold priority in my life.
Yeah. And what time of day were you doing it typically? Like, was it a late evening thing? Was it just in the day?
Allowed. But I always made sure to, if I had an opportunity, I was doing clearances.
Right. So you were just grabbing any time you could throughout the day.
Yep.
Yeah, because it can be quite tiring sometimes. So sometimes I recommend that people maybe do it at night. It is exhausting, isn't it? So maybe not best before operating heavy machinery, for example.
I wouldn't suggest that, no.
Yeah.
Just it's tiring. You're going to feel exhausted at the end of it, but you're going to feel so much better.
I know, yay! Brilliant. Well, thank you, Celeste, so much for just sharing all of that. And and good luck for your onward clearance journey and the upper echelons of snooker ball and glitter ball status, which you'll be achieving by the end of by Christmas, maybe.
Glitter ball, I'm coming for you.
Yes.
But Alexia, thank you so much. You are fantastic.
Well, thank you for showing up in the way that you did, because it's and you deserve everything you've got because you've just shown up. So brilliant. Thank you, Celeste.
Thank you.